Hi, I'm Mitch Hahn, CEO of Norden's Chartered Accountants. I hope you've been watching the live Zoom calls that we've been doing with regards to COVID-19. I've had some really good feedback and, it's proven that it's helping businesses. So over the last couple of videos, I've been, R&D, research and development has come up quite a lot as something that business owners should be doing now. More than ever during this period of time. So I thought I would bring in David, who you can see to my left. David is our head of growth and business development of Norden's. David understands R&D better than most, and I thought it'd be great to get a call so people can understand what R&D is and how people can go about it. So David, welcome.
Hi there, Mitch.
Do you want to, can you just give a brief background of yourself?
Of course I can. Hi there, everyone. My name's David Jaye. I've been with Norden's since November last year, but I've spent the last 20 years working in the accountancy profession in different guises, actually. I started off in tax, and then more recently I went into more of a business development role. But the reason Mitch has obviously brought me in today is that in my previous role, I was quite heavily involved in identifying research and development tax relief opportunities across a whole range of accountancy practices and obviously all their client base. So it's good to be on here today, Mitch.
No, I appreciate it. So look, I think the biggest question, because R&D gets thrown around everywhere, what actually is R&D, research and development?
Yeah, so R&D is obviously, it's a tax relief that the government give to companies essentially that can prove that they have been involved in research and development. I think the really important thing to get across straight away from the offset is that it doesn't always have to be groundbreaking or blue sky thinking. It can sometimes just be making a tweak to something. And I'll come on to that in a bit when we talk through the qualifying criteria, Mitch.
So, I know it's basically, to cut a long story short, and I know you're going to come into the long story, but it's literally free money that the government are giving away, and businesses, we've had it in the past where business owners don't actually know that they qualify for R&D. But I'll let you carry on. So what qualifies a business for R&D? I'll let you go into the detail.
Yeah, typically, and again, if anyone ever does want more clarity on this, then obviously feel free to obviously contact us. But essentially, a company needs to be demonstrating three qualifying criteria. The first qualifying criteria is what they call aiming to or achieving an advance in technology. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be, as I said, anything sort of groundbreaking. It could be making a tweak. It could be making a product or a material or a service or even a process. It could be making it quicker. It could be making something cheaper. It could be making it more eco-friendly. So again, it's all that sort of thing you need to be looking out for. But more importantly, the second criteria is making sure that you can demonstrate that you're overcoming some sort of technological uncertainty. So that's maybe where something isn't necessarily known at the start of the project as to whether it's going to, whether it's going to go through or not, I guess. The final criteria, Mitch, is what they call it mustn't be readily deducible by a competent professional. I know that's a mouthful as I'm explaining it, but typically, Mitch, it's not something that the two of us could do over the weekend. They normally measure it by time frame. So if a project is going to last at least 3 months, then they would say that would meet the final criteria. So essentially, three qualifying criteria that we need to tick before we even start looking at the actual costs of the project.
And I think it's worth saying now that there's probably a lot of business owners watching this or will watch this that will say, oh, well, that's not me. But I'll strongly recommend going through the process of finding out if it is you, because if it is you, there's potentially free money to claim back. And I think, I'll let you give a few examples of R&D.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to give two examples, actually. I mean, the first one is a recent claim that we were involved in at Norden's, and essentially we saved the client, I think it was around £300,000, and obviously they were delighted. We we sort of pushed them to obviously make this claim. We identified it, and obviously the repayment was made. I think they've got all the money back now, but
And I don't think they weren't even aware that they qualified for R&D. I don't believe
they weren't even aware. We were obviously up against a time frame as well, which I'll explain in a minute exactly what that is. But they were over the moon. So that's obviously a very good example, and obviously a really big tax saving. In a previous role, I went down to a business that had someone else get involved in putting through R&D. And bearing in mind, there are people that think that they're naturals at this. They think it's an easy win, but you've got to be really careful because, ultimately, the report needs to substantiate a claim that's being made. And obviously that's where we'll come into play on that. But I went down there and we identified a huge cost that had been missed, and it ended up in a really big repayment for the client, which again, they were completely unaware of.
And I think it's also worth saying that the revenue will literally pay back the money between 2 and 12 weeks. And it doesn't have to be big costs. We've had clients that have had, 2, 3, 4, 5, £10,000 refunded. But, imagine getting that refunded in 2 weeks' time during this whole, situation that's going on. It's free money that is, it could be crucial right now.
It could just be sitting there, and I alluded to the fact that obviously there is a time frame, and claims need to be made 2 years after the accounting period. So just to give you an example of that, if there's a client who has a December year end, you'd be looking to make the 2018 claim by the end of this year, because obviously you have 2 years from 31st of December 2018. But bear in mind, you can obviously look back to the 1st of January 2018. So essentially, it's that whole 3-year window, but it has to be made by that time deadline.
Yeah, so it's actually worth doing now. Otherwise, you literally could be missing out on,
Absolutely. And the last thing we want is obviously clients who weren't aware that there was a claim there, and obviously someone else has mentioned it to them. We want to be proactive in that. So
well, not just clients, everyone. I think, our aim is to help everyone, I think, whether they're clients or not, and anybody could be missing out on cash back from the government to help get through this period. And potentially grow in the future as well during this time. Great. Thank you, David. So what industries does it apply to? Or
again, it covers a whole range of industries, and I wouldn't want to rule anything out, because as I said, it could just be changing a process, could be making a tweak to a process, which can apply to any industry, I guess. But if we're going to sort of focus on industries, I guess the obvious one would be the software industry. You've got the engineering, you've got manufacturing, you've got agriculture, you've got food and drink, travel and hospitality, a whole range of industries that it would cover. And that's just a few. We have bespoke marketing across 20 to 25 industries, which would detail the types of things that you can and can't claim for.
So I would say to everybody watching this, literally get in touch. Even if you think you 100% don't qualify for R&D, at least go through the process. I think you mentioned to me before, David, it takes about 15 minutes.
Yeah, I've obviously had experience of qualifying R&D claims, so I'm more than happy to spend it's 10 to 15 minutes just having a call, just to really ascertain whether there is going to be some eligibility in there, and 9 times out of 10, if a client feels that there could be something, there normally is.
So but what I'm saying is, even if you think, no, there's absolutely no way this applies to me, for 15 minutes of your time,
absolutely,
and a phone call with us.
Yeah, no, Mitch, you're totally right. And I think even just to rule it out, sometimes it's just worth making that call, because as you say, in the scenario that we've had with certain clients, if
pleasantly
right
surprised
up against that time limit, exactly, they're pleasantly surprised, and they're going to, this time of, with what's going on out there, it's money which could be sitting in their clients' bank accounts.
No, I appreciate that's good information. So David, I've got some questions to ask you.
Yeah.
What do Hmrc need to approve a tax claim?
So essentially, to approve an R&D tax claim, they need a report to substantiate the figures that are going in. So that's obviously where Nordens will be able to support in that. And I guess obviously the larger the claim, the more important it is to ensure that that report is what I would say watertight, Mitch. You know, at the end of the day, you know, we don't want to leave any stone unturned, and obviously having a really strong relationship with the revenue, you know, we obviously provide them with a report that backs up the claim. So yeah, that's typically what they would need, obviously, with the corporation
and
tax.
we wouldn't put, it's worth saying that we wouldn't put a report in that's gonna, you know, not meet their requirements, or to the highest level where we could potentially get the biggest refund effectively.
Exactly.
Cool. Another question. So what costs can be claimed?
So in terms of categories of cost, they split that into it's 6 buckets of expenditure. So once you've ascertained whether you're eligible for a claim, typically what you would look at are the following areas. You'd look at your staff costs, so that's salaries, not dividends. You'd look at your subcontractor costs, which is the second area. You'd look at your R&D materials and consumables that would be used in the R&D process. You'd be looking at some light, heat and power costs. Software licenses is the 5th one, and there's an externally provided workers, which is the sixth bucket, so to speak, where they would look at as well. But Mitch, to be completely honest, it's going to be typically the staff and the subcontractor costs where the majority of claims will lie.
What if the director is the only member of staff?
If the director is the only member of staff, in terms of making the claim?
You know, yeah, so they're producing their own limited company. They are on the payroll, but they're the only member of staff on a salary.
Again, they'd have to take a proportion of what their salary is. So typically when we qualify a claim and obviously start going through the expenditure, you know, we're looking at the percentage of involvement that particular, either the director or the employee has had in the actual development of the R&D or the claim that's being made. So yeah.
Thank you. No, good. So if you've never claimed R&D tax relief before, can you claim retrospectively? Which you've basically answered. You can claim up to 2 years after your year end, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so 2 years after year end, but unfortunately, if it is before then, it will be lost, and that's why I sort of urge anyone sort of watching this video to really think back. You know, think about, you know, what your year end is and work it backwards. And again, if you're struggling with knowing what that time frame is, just give me a really quick call and I can talk you through it, because it's quite easy just to illustrate it on a timeline.
Yeah.
So I'm more than happy to do that, Mitch.
Thank you. Can my claim trigger an inquiry by Hmrc?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like anything. You know, there's always any sort of tax relief claim that you're putting in could be prone for Hmrc looking into. But I'm going to bring it back to the point where, obviously, if Nordens are involved in actually making that claim and substantiating it with a report that's going to back it up, then, you know, we're confident in our own abilities that if there was an inquiry, we would deal with it, and we would obviously, like any tax inquiry, you know, we'd obviously put our case forward to the revenue. So it's
they wouldn't inquire. You know, it would only be an inquiry into the R&D claim itself. It's not going to open up any sorts of claims into other areas of the company.
Typically not. Again, you just never know, of course. But, you know, from what I've seen, in my experience, is if there has been a claim, which hasn't been many, it's been into the R&D claim itself, Mitch.
Yeah, no, it would make sense. Someone's actually sent me a message now saying I've made a claim and I'm expecting money back. How long will it take?
Yeah, as I said, I think we touched on that a bit earlier, but typically between 2 and 12 weeks it would take.
So we've had some where they've been 2 weeks, haven't they? And then some where
we've seen 2 weeks. I've seen 4 weeks. I've seen 6 weeks. I think the longest one I've personally seen is 8 weeks. But they do say between 2 and 12 weeks. But
they pay 100% in full, don't they? They pay everything in full straight away, which is right now is absolutely
it's crucial.
It's crucial.
Yeah, it's obviously one of those that we need to make sure everyone is looking at the minute, definitely.
And I think, David, right now, with all the grants that are coming out from from the government, from the chancellor during this time, if an SME has received grant funding, um, can they still claim R&D tax relief?
Yeah, in short, yes, they can. Again, with grants, it's a slightly more complex area, but I think the short answer is yes, they can. I think if someone has had a grant, then again, if they can call in and we can talk them through that process and the different options that are available, definitely.
Good. So the simple answer is yes, and to let us qualify it. But I think it's worth saying, reiterating, is now is the perfect time to utilize R&D, even if you think, and there's 100% chance that you do not qualify. You should still go through the process. It's 15 minutes. It's not going to cost you anything to see if any part of your business does qualify, because you could be pleasantly surprised and could end up with quite a large or a small refund. But right now, any sort of refund from the revenue would be
is good.
It'd be good right now.
I think it's also worth mentioning, Mitch, that even if a project has been aborted, then that doesn't matter. They're not looking for the revenue, aren't looking for something to have actually necessarily gone through to completion. So again, if a business has been involved in a certain project and there's been R&D that we can identify in that, then they can still make a claim.
No, that's good. So what I will say is, anybody watching this, email in to businessdevelopment@nordens.co.uk. If you are already a client and watching this, then speak to anyone you know at Nordens and they'll be able to point you in the right direction. Or, we're working as normal, 0208 530 0720. But if, let's leave it at that. David, is there anything that you want to say to finish off?
Yeah, again, just to sort of reiterate on what would be in it in terms of the actual savings. So again, just talking with round numbers. So typically, if you're an SME business, a small medium-sized enterprise, and your R&D expenditure, which is obviously you've identified as being qualifying, is say maybe £100,000. Typically, you'd get around 25,000 back. So it's pretty much around. It's slightly less than that, but it's around that sort of figure. If you're a loss-making company, then there's obviously a saving there as well. So it doesn't just apply to profit-making companies. It applies to loss-making companies as well, and they would get a payable cash credit back, which actually works out slightly more, believe it or not. So
good.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, David.
Yeah. No, that's good, Mitch. Thanks. And so if anyone's got any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us.
Perfect. Cheers, David.
Thanks, Mitch. See you later.